Okay, so something that I realized after I got to this point is this little corner here is sticking out just enough to get in the way of where we're going to put this longer standoff. And same for this side. That's sticking off just far enough to get in the way of right there. So we're going to go ahead and solder that down, or not solder, file that down. So I'm just using a fingernail file. If you have a better file, that would probably work better, or better yet, if you haven't got to this point, you can go ahead and cut that off nice and good before you get to this point where I'm at, because I don't really feel like desoldering all of this just to clean this up a little bit. So just gonna file that down. Still not quite enough. Almost there. Just that little piece that's still hanging off. Yep, I should have cut this off better the first time before putting it all in the board. Okay, and so we're going to go ahead and take one of our long screws here with the smaller end. And we'll just use this to check. See if we're going to have enough clearance yet. Okay, so yeah, looks like we have enough clearance on that side. Actually, more clearance than I thought we would. Now let's file down this corner a little bit. There we go. And you can actually see that these wires need pushed out of the way just a little bit. And we'll see if that's enough clearance for this standoff. And I'm just putting them in by hand by now. There we go. And so there we go. Just now there's just enough clearance there. For those two standoffs. Okay, so now that we now know where those standoffs are going, let's go ahead and think about where we're going to have our battery lead go. So we're going to be using this positive and this negative, and we're going to want to go off to this right side of the board because the plan is to put our VTX in here. We have our wire here, and we can go ahead and we're going to go ahead and solder on our black wire first. So first we need to strip it. And our power distribution board is already pre-tinned, but we need to go ahead and tin up the wire. And since this wire is so thick, this is a little bit more difficult than normally is. There you go, and just let it soak up a lot of solder there. A lot of solder. On a nice, good connection. Okay. Now I'm actually going to flip this around since I'm right-handed. I'm going to solder it off to that side. Get it in. Make sure it's really flowing in there with the board. There we go. Nice strong connection there. Let's go ahead and strip this red wire. Try to get a little bit more even of a cut. There we go. And go ahead and get a bunch of solder on here. Really should get a clamp or something to hold that for me. Just let a lot of solder flow in there. I'm actually going to put on a little bit more. Nice glob of it. Okay. And get it to this positive pad. Oops. There we go. I'm actually going to add a little bit more. Okay, there we go. Lots of solder. Cleaning off the tip. Okay. So let's flip this back around. And so our battery lead's going to stick up just a little bit there, but that's okay. Now we're going to want it to come down right about to here. We're going to connect an XT60 to it, but before that, go ahead and look at the length that we want. And this one we don't want it to be too loose, otherwise the battery, we flip it around. So we do want it one length of the video transmitter. So that's where we're going to snip it. Snip. There we go. And now we need to strip these sides. These are the sides that are going to go into our XT60. Okay. Okay. There we are. Just to make sure there's still a good length. Should be perfect. Okay, and now an XT60 came with our power distribution board. So the positive is going to go for the red, and then this kind of triangled side negative is going to go for our black negative. This should be pretty apparent if you have a battery. The black is kind of the triangle side, ground, and then the red positive is the bigger side of the XT60. So we want these really close together because we're going to actually be sticking them on these parts of the XT60. This is actually an interesting XT60. I'm used to ones with a little bit different holes. Again, lots of solder. Just cake on the solder. Okay. Now we can actually pre-solder these connections. Okay. So now it becomes a little bit more tricky, but we should just be able to put our soldering iron in between the two and just kind of press down into that hole so it all flows together. Ah, shoot. It all flows together and let it cool. There we go. Not the prettiest job. Yeah, I almost like the other connectors a little bit better. Okay. Now the negative side. Oh, it looks like this is coming off, so it must not have got solder on that side. So we'll go ahead and make sure there's no random little follicles. Oh, there we go. Okay. Now, clean off my soldering iron a little bit. Okay. Let's see if I can get this in. Trying to get it push the Now it's actually getting a little bit hot. So I'm going to go ahead and hold this here. Make sure I get the XT60 heated up. Yeah, I really like the other XT60 connectors better. I'm just going to add some more solder in here. This is not my best soldering job. Okay. Careful not to burn yourself. It's pretty hot, but now we have our battery lead. Okay, so one thing that I should have done, and that we're going to do now, is add the capacitor. And we're going to put this capacitor. Here's the capacitor. We're going to go ahead and put this capacitor right here on the battery lead. And I haven't ever done this on a build before. This is the first quad that I built that's going to have this capacitor. So it's pretty simple. We should just have to solder this side that has this white strip, or this lighter strip, to the black negative side, and then this other bigger all blue side to the positive. So let's go ahead and peel off this paper. Okay, there we go. And that's, oh, and the negative side is a little bit shorter, so that's the negative. Positive's a little bit longer. In case you got a different capacitor. So we don't need I don't think we are going to need the full length. So let's go ahead and snip off. I'll go ahead and do a little bit of a diagonal cut so the positive one stays a little bit long, and we're just going to snip off just a little bit. Yeah, just the end right there. And you could leave the whole thing on, but I think it'll be a little bit more out of the way if we go ahead and snip that. I don't think the exactness is too important. Snip. Maybe a little bit more than I wanted, but we should be okay. So just to give you an idea, the length is probably just under an XT60, the connector length. But you probably, if I was to just snip it again right now, I'd probably do it the length of the XT60. So I'm going to just go ahead and spread those out. Okay, and pre-tin first. Get some solder on there. And since we're soldering to a spot that's already soldered, no need to add extra. Now I just hope I don't unsolder the XT60 from this battery lead. And my thought is, this is the first build that I put on one, so if it comes off, it's not going to be the end of the world, because none of my other quads have one of these connectors, or capacitors. Okay, and there we go. We have a capacitor on our battery lead, and we'll cover that up with either heat shrink or electrical tape. to really make sure we hold that in place.